Hello, everybody. This is Enzo Universe. Welcome back to my channel. Before we dive into writing, there is one more topic we need to talk about. There is an old saying a workman must sharpen his tool if he is to do his work better. So, we are breaking down the essential tools you need to start your journey into Chinese hard pen calligraphy. I'm going to introduce what kind of pens, paper, and other stationery to use to help your Chinese calligraphy practice. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, or share with friends. Your supportive are the great motivation for me to finish this Chinese calligraphy sharing series. First part, a quick peek at four treasures of the Chinese study. Before we jump into those modern stationery, a tiny bit of culture. The traditional artist's tookit was called the four treasure of the Chinese study. These are the classic tools that have been around for ages. Think of them as the OG, the legendary combo, the brush pen, the most traditional writing tool, paper like xuan paper, super fancy, ink stick, that rich dark stuff, and ink stone to grind ink stick to make ink. These were not just tools, they were like the ancient equivalent of a top tier artist's setup, packed with history, craftsmanship, and rich culture. They are the foundation of Chinese calligraphy art. Each of them has profound cultural connotations and interesting characteristics. Why should you care? Even though we're using hard pens, those old school tools invented the rules of good writing. Smooth lines, balanced characters, a great diversity of aesthetic orientations, ever changing skills of writing, and so on. Hard pen calligraphy borrows most of that aesthetics, but with less difficulties and skills, and integrate more into our daily handwriting scenarios. The stationery used in hard pen calligraphy mainly include just pen and paper. You can find them almost anywhere. Think of it as the two treasures of the hard pen version Chinese study. Because modern pen, except fountain pen or dip pen, has covered brush, ink stick, and ink stone. Second part. Let's start with pens. Your pen makes or breaks your calligraphy. Here is the lowdown on which ones to grab and to avoid. The golden rules for picking a pen are as follows. First rule, the size and weight. You need to find a pen that is of the right size and weight, so that you can control your pen as your wish and not feeling tired when writing more than 1 hour. Write with a pen that makes you feel comfortable and easy. Second rule, variation in the thickness. The nib can make thin lines when write lightly and make thick lines when write harder. You can test your pen like this. Hold the end of the pen and drag the pen gently. If the pen can draw thin and steady lines, this means this pen flows ink constantly and can write thin lines. Then try writing gently and harder and harder. If the lines get thicker and thicker, this pen will do. Go for a fine or medium nib or around 0.5 to 1 millimeter nib for practice. If the nib is thinner than 0.5 millimeters, it can hardly write thick enough strokes. Third rule, the nib slides smoothly on the paper. No skipping, no scratching. Imagine writing feels effortless and under control. If the big resistance between your nib and the paper, you will feel hard to write steady strokes or even breaks the paper. If your nib slides too much on the paper, your pen will lose control. This is all about personal preference. You should find the best match between your pen nib and the paper. The fourth rule, the ink flows consistently from the nib. No interruptions, no faint streaks. Ink output must be steady, with no unevenness as it is applied. The ink should not flow sometimes too much and sometimes too little without your control. Like this pen, the pen ink flows with faint streaks and interruptions. We can't use them practice writing. The fifth rule, the ink shouldn't bleed through the paper. The ink should dry reasonably fast and no smudges, no blobs. It shouldn't bleed through your paper like the lines are moldly. We want crisp lines, not a fuzzy mess. To avoid this happening, choosing a right paper also matters. The sixth rule, no slide holding the pen. When you hold your pen to write, your fingers shouldn't slide on the pen. Or you will use more strength to hold your pen that breaks the relaxed condition of your fingers and hand. I have emphasized so many times to keep your hand and fingers relaxed when writing. You may feel more about how important relaxation is in future practice. So choose a kind of pen you are familiar with as long as your pen meets the above rules. Well, there are different types of pens. Let's rank them. First one, gel pens. The pros are ink is a kind of gel, so they're smooth as butter, no ink refuse, and not pricier. They're easy to use, no messy, widely available, consistent, light. Line variation may be a little bit less dramatic than a fountain pen, but still very achievable. I think no counts for gel pens. So my tip is go for 0.5 to 1 millimeter tips. They show off your strokes better than those thinner than 0.5 millimeters ones. And you should notice that there are two types of nib, bullet nib and a needle nib. I recommended using bullet nib because it is more smooth and stable with bolder tip. Needle tips are usually too thin and maybe break if you write too hard. Sometimes they are not smooth enough. What's more, there are also a lot of kind of bullet nibs. They have different writing feelings, so find your favorite ones. Second type, fountain pens. They have so many kinds of nibs. Different nibs have different feelings of writing and different expressions. Something like walking with different shoes have different feelings. But they need a little care, can be pricier, need a suitable ink. If you're not familiar with fountain pens, I don't recommend you start with it. I personally love using fountain pens, and you will see them often in my videos, but it doesn't mean that you should use fountain pens as well. If you decide to use fountain pens, my tip is start with a fine or medium nib, about 0.5 or 0.7 millimeter. Choose a good ink that matches your fountain pen and the paper. What's more, there are two kinds of fountain pens I don't recommend for starters. One is band nib pen like this. This is for some pro writers. You need some other special skills using them. Another one is calligraphy pen with a board or flat nib. They are good in lettering calligraphy, but not suitable for Chinese calligraphy. Third one, ball pens. They are widely available, super cheap, light, never bleeding on paper, dry fast. But because the ink is oil based, the lines are not that precise and the ink can get gloopy, flows not that consistently, maybe with interruptions or faint streaks. Nib is too sleepy to control, so my tip is using them for quick notes, but skip them for real practice. The fourth one, rollerball pen. No ink refuse, easy to use, no mess, consistent, but the lines are not that precise, and the water-based ink may bleed on some paper. The nib is somehow sleepy to control, and it can be pricier. So my tip is use them for notes or signature, but skip them for real practice. The fifth one, pencils. They are widely available, super cheap, light, never bleed on paper, but lines are light somehow, so someone may use too much strength to write, which breaks the relaxed condition, and the thickness may change when writing. The nib may break. So my tip is if you have to use them, try with HB or 2B wood pencils, not mechanical ones that are too flimsy and too thin. And I recommend just give up pencils and try gel pens. Sixth one, 秀丽 pens or calligraphy specific felt pens. They have a special tip, often chisel shaped or firmed pointed, that makes creating thick and thin lines easier. They are like brush pen hybrid, soft tip let you make bold brush like lines. Purpose built, easy to get consistent result, great for creating artworks. But the tips wear out fast and they are tricky to master. The ink may bleed on some paper. So my tip is save these for when you've got some skills. They are fun, but not for newbies. Tips can wear out faster than metal. The ink flow might feel different. The seventh one, dip pens. Talk about versatility. You can swap out nibs to get super thin or extra thick lines. Great if you're feeling artsy, but you gotta dip them in ink after writing several characters. The ink may not flow evenly. Dip pen may put out too much ink when just dip in ink, but less ink after writing a few strokes. Some metal nibs are too soft to control, so my tip is skip them for regular hard pen calligraphy. They are more for fancy art projects or old school lettering, not nailing those crisp Chinese characters. The eighth one, markers. Super felt tip markers or like highlighters, they are not for precise work. The nib is too thick, not for Chinese calligraphy. The ninth one, fancy brush pens. They look more traditional, more like mini brushes combined fountain pens, but they are actually harder to control than the pens we listed above. The skills of using them are completely different from hard-tipped pen. They are like substitutes for brushes. Maybe I will show you some skills in future videos, but don't use them practice hard-tipped pen calligraphy. So in conclusion, go for gel pens with 0.5 to 1 mm bullet tips for practice. If you are familiar with fountain pens, choose a fine or medium nib and a good ink matches your paper. Others are not recommended. Third part, about the paper. Your calligraphy needs the right surface. Here is what we are looking for. So the first basic rule is no bleeding. The paper should hold the ink neatly. The ink should not bleed and not feathery, where the ink spread out like spider legs. We want sharp, defined lines. Second rule, a little grip. Not too slippery, not too rough, just enough friction to control your pen. Let the pen glide smoothly without catching or fraying the tip. Third rule, tough enough. The paper should tear if you press a little harder, and not too thick like cardstock. Standard paper weight is around 70 to 100 GSM or grams per square meter. Fourth rule, suitable grade on the paper will help you learn and practice. Let me show you some types of paper. First one, copy paper. They're cheap, smooth, and some of them are not bleeding, but some will bleed. Find a good one. They're great for practice. You need to test it first. If your pen bleeds on it, it's not the one. Change your paper or your pen instead. Second one, dowling paper. Moderate whiteness, easy on the eyes, even thickness, stiff, and tear resistant. The surface is smooth but has tiny textures with low and even water absorption. So perfect for fountain pens or gel pens. The ink dries fast, barely bleeds, and the pen glides smoothly with a little bit of friction. I like practicing with dowling paper very much. The third one, Malcolm paper. Moderate with whiteness. That means easy on the eyes, even thickness, stiff, and tear resistant. The surface has more textures that can help you better control your pen, but some of them may absorb ink too much that may influence your strokes or lines. So they're perfect for gel pens. Gel ink dries fast, barely bleeds, and the pen glides with a little friction that can help your pen controlling. Fourth one, Xuan paper. It is a traditional Chinese paper. There are mainly three types. The classification is like the degree of doneness of a stick. Raw or rare Xuan paper, untreated, so it soaks up ink super fast, making the ink spread quickly. Second type, cooked or well done Xuan paper. They are treated with alum, so it barely absorbs ink, no spreading or bleeding. The third one is semi-cooked or medium Xuan paper, in between with moderate absorption. So raw Xuan paper and semi-cooked Xuan paper are made for brush pens, using the ink spread to show layers of ink. The cooked Xuan paper works for detailed painting or small neat lines, no bleeding, perfect for hard-tipped pen. The fifth type of paper is yucca paper, from Japan's yucca paper mill. Thin but strong, doesn't wrinkle easily, low and even water absorption, and super smooth surface, but maybe pricier. So they're amazing for hard-tip pens, especially fountain pens. The pen glides extremely smooth, ink dries fast, no bleeding or spreading, great for ink showing the sheen, but maybe it's not good for brush pens. The sixth one, vellum paper or sulfuric acid paper. They have a smooth surface, very low water absorption, so hard pens glide smoothly. Some of them are fragile. Its semi-transparency makes it good for tracing, but not daily writing. The seventh type, calligraphy-specific paper. Some brands make paper specifically designed for fountain pens or calligraphy, often smoother and more ink resistant. They are a great option, but maybe pricier. And some of the papers are on the avoid list. Like craft paper, they are thick, stiff, rough surface, and moderate water absorption, so pens feel noticeable friction or roughness and may bleed, so not suitable for practice. Or newsprint or thin recycled paper, they bleed like crazy, super rough texture. Or glossy or magazine paper, the ink smears forever, feels slippery and weird, don't use them. Or cardboard or very thick paper, uncomfortable to write on, or they may damage your pen tips over time. And next, let's focus on the layouts, lines, and grids on the paper. First type, I personally recommend 米字 grid or 田字 grid or 回字 grid. This is your best friend when starting. It's like the training wheels for your characters. It has a central plus and maybe an X inside squares that helps you position every stroke and understand the Chinese character's structure. Those lines are not decoration. They are your guide to beautiful characters. I will show you how to use them in future videos. I personally recommend use 田字 grid is enough. Too many reference lines may disturb or help too much. The second is square grids. Each character gets its own little box, but the lacking of reference lines is not recommended to beginners. The third one is lines grid. They are just lines on the paper as grids, also not recommended to beginners. The fourth one is blank paper. They are for pros who want freestyle, but beginners, steer clear, you will end up with a hot mess. About the grid size, I recommend 1.5 centimeter or about 0.6 inches 田字 grids, the sweet spot for most practice. They're big enough to see details clearly. Other grids smaller than this are not recommended. They are too small to help you understand the relationships among strokes and hard to observe. The max size for hard-tipped pen grids is 2 centimeter, perfect for bold style or if you like writing bigger characters. I normally use 1.5 centimeter or 1.8 centimeter 田字 grids for daily practice, and I prefer 2 cm grids when filming my videos, because this will help you see what I write. There are also different kind of grid size. Maybe we will talk about them in the future. About the size of the paper, A4 or A5 is most commonly used for practice. Other size may be used for creating art of works. One more thing you should pay attention is your need to protect your paper. Keep them in a suitable place, like these two pieces of paper. I put them in a humid and a direct sunlight place. As you can see, the color turned yellow and they sound different from the well-protected ones. When I write with fountain pens, they bleed more and easier to break. So here are some suggestions about paper protection. The general rules are keep it flat, no folding, stay away from sunlight, and in a clean sealed bag or box. It's best to keep humidity around 40% or 70% to keep the paper in good writing condition. More specific, if you stayed in humid places, paper may get mushy and moist. It will get easy to bleed. And because it shrinks some water, it may become not flat enough. So stick them in a sealed bag or box with desiccant packs. You can get them when you buy new clothes, shoes, food, medicine, or something. Or you can just buy some directly. As long as they are clean, put them in the sealed bag or box with your paper. Stay those packs away from children. This is how I keep my paper. As you can see, there are some desiccant packs and different papers in this sealed box. Well, if you stay in dry places, paper gets crispy and shrinks. When the paper hardens and gets rough, often become catching or scratching. Use a humidifier or wrap it in an acid-free paper to keep the moisture in it. In conclusion, those A4 or A5 copy paper or dialing paper that not bleeding with your ink, there should be a 田字 square grid that around 1.5 centimeter to 2 centimeter large. Keep your paper in the environment humidity around 40 to 70 in a flat condition. The fourth part, some sidekicks you need. You've got pen and paper. Now let's round out your tookit. Writing mat or pad is necessary. It should be soft, flat, and flexible sheet of rubber, plastic, or silicone gel, and you can put it under your paper. This does two amazing things. It gives your pen tip that perfect little bounce for creating beautiful line variation between thick and thin, and it protects your deck's nib and makes writing smoother. No more annoying scratchy sounds or disturbing from rough table. Think of it like giving your pen and the paper a comfy memory for a mattress. So you need look for something about 1.5 to 3 millimeter thick, like a thin mouse pad, A4 or letter size or slightly bigger. Personally, I suggest silicone mat would be the best. It's odorless, safety, soft, and smooth. Rubber or some other kinds of plastic may smelly or too hard or too sleepy. Mouse mat will also do, but some of them may be too soft that you may break your paper easily when writing. You can try yourself and choose your favorite. Well, I don't recommend use a pad of paper or cardboard as a writing mat, because when you write several times, there will be dents in the paper or cardboards, which may affect your future writing. Make your strokes not steady. This is also one of the reasons I strongly don't recommend you practice with notebooks. The following page might show a mark or dents from the former page. This will influence your writing. And the other reason is since the notebook somehow is thick, it will affect your pen holding and consequently influences your handwriting. So I suggest every time you practice, just use one piece of paper, put it on your mat, and start practicing. Other stuff like paperweight, it's not necessary for hard pen because the suggested size of paper is not that large, and our left hand can help keeping the paper steady. If you have difficulties to do this, you can use a cell phone or stone or something flat and heavy to hold your paper. And some tools that wear on your arms or hand or wrist and claim to help you correct your ways of holding a pen. No, please don't use them. They are useless. Use your mind to control your way of holding and controlling a pen, and form good habits. Just like you seldom see a great player or dancer tied a tool to help them correcting movements or actions. Here is a final conclusion about a pen. A smooth gel pen with 0.5 or 0.7 or 1 mm nib, or fountain pens with F or M nib that you're familiar with. Avoid cheap ballpoints and markers. About paper, A4, A5 practice paper with 1.5 to 2 cm 田字 squared grade. Avoid thin or bleeding paper. Find the best match of your pen ink and paper. Love and protect your pen and paper. Essential extras: a soft, flat, and flexible writing mat or pad, about 1.5 to 3 mm thick. Don't skip this. That's it. Simple, affordable, and incredibly effective. You don't need a mountain of expensive gear to start creating beautiful Chinese characters. Now you are armed with those knowledges. Go find your favorite stationery. In the next video, we will tackle your very first stroke and a Chinese character. Drop a comment below and tell me which pen or paper you are excited to try. Hit that like button if this was helpful. Subscribe so you don't miss the next sharing, and ring the bell for the notifications. Your supportive are the great motivation for me to finish this sharing series. Thanks for watching. See you next time.